That's when Lewis enters. He says the car is all packed up. He plants a kiss on Mrs. Gilbert, or I don't really know their last name. And he tells Gilbert's mom how long it will take, which is ARV, which apparently stands for Average Restroom Visits. Good to know. JD, we've got our two main characters here. Robert Carradine, who plays Lewis, Gilbert, played by Anthony Edwards. What do you think of the two leads here, our lovable nerds?
They are lovable nerds for sure, but they are nerds. They even have pocket protectors.
Those are still a thing. My wife's uncle actually wears one all the time, and I'm always like, nerd. I don't think he gets it, though. But yeah, and one thing I really love, too, like this Revenge of the Nerds intro song, which I'm going to insert right here in the background. What do you think of the intro song?
Fantastic. I loved every moment of it.
It's a good song.
It's a fantastic song. That's how I'm going to drive to work tomorrow.
I kind of like the last song in the movie, though. Like, do. Yeah, that might be better for me. But so we arrive at the fictional Adams College, and Lewis tells him everything's going to be great. Lewis tells him that there are going to be 6,127 students, 58% of which are going to be female, and that's 7,107.2 boobs. His dad jokes that he wishes he was going with him. And can you do a good Lewis laugh here, JD?
Kind of like the Eddie Murphy laugh.
Yeah. I actually read in the some interesting facts that said that he kind of came up with the laugh on the spot, and then as he was driving home, it hit him that it was actually his girlfriend's laugh that annoys the shit out of him.
Oh, gosh.
So, could you even imagine that laugh on a female?
That's like Elmer Fudd in a grater.
Ugh, that's a good comparison. So we arrive on campus, and you can already hear like some of the jocks in the background practicing. Lewis's dad gives him a quick pep talk, and he tells him not to break any hearts. And Lewis, well, that hasn't been a problem for me yet. And they're and they start breaking out into a laugh. And then they unpack this trunk. Man, this trunk, JD, is ridiculous. And the fact that they just like pulled it off the top of the car, would it not have just scraped the shit out of that car?
Oh, and for sure ruin that classic trunk. Like that's a travel to Madagascar trunk.
Yeah, that's true. Now we meet Ogre next. He's hanging a nerd off the balcony at the Ada Beta house. Ogre drops the dude like head over heels and starts a nerd chant. How great is Ogre? And I mean, he has to be your favorite character, is he not?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Ogre is definitely, clear and by far the main character of this movie. He's the hero of this movie. And I want to say he murders at least 3 to 4 different nerds. Because this guy that he drops off the roof does not live. He's dead.
Oh, well, for sure he's dead. Now, JD, fill our audience in. Where did we last see Ogre in our archives?
That's a great question, Kyle. And I'm going to go ahead and just bat it right back to you.
Okay, well, I'll give you a hint, JD. Rhymes with Bun Sport?
Bun Sport?
I don't know. Blood Sport. Come on, man. It's Jackson.
How did you misrhyme Blood Sport with Bun Sport?
You know what? The rhyming's not the issue. The issue is you forgot who he is.
Oh, man. I won!
Yeah! And then he gets destroyed. Never celebrate early. Moral of the story, in our archives, check it out. Angry Dad Podcast. We gotta get Ben on. He hasn't been on in a while.
Not since Bun Sport, apparently.
So let's keep chugging along here. So the party is in full effect at the Beta House. We catch our first glimpse of Jefferson Darcy, also known as Stan Gable in this movie, played by Ted McGinley. Then we cut to the dorm with Lewis and Gilbert. And it's not quite the pad that the Betas guys have, but Gilbert says he'll take the bed by the window. And Lewis is like, all right, all yours. And then he hangs up a Sky's the Limit poster on the wall with a computer on it. Man, JD, they were definitely right on this one here with the whole computers and Sky's the Limit, right?
Oh, they knew what they were doing. They had nerds down to an N.
Yes, they did. And Lewis tells Gilbert that they are allowed to have women in the dorm rooms, and Lewis just can't believe his ears. And then we cut back to Stan Gable drinking a Fireball, 188 proof vodka, some dude in suspenders just starts shooting it out and then catches the whole house on fire and burns it down. But that leads me to my question, JD. What's the highest proof alcohol you've ever drank?
Oh boy, nothing that'll set a house on fire, but enough that'll strip the paint.
Okay. I like that analogy. I would say for me, probably, I would say Everclear. I don't think I've ever gone more than that.
What do you mix your Everclear with? Capri
Um,
Sun?
no, we didn't really mix it with anything. In fact, I don't know if you remember this or not, but freshman year in college, I actually had some that was like stored behind my DVD case, which was hidden from the RAs because again, dry campus people, it was awful. But anyway, got to drinking one night, burned a little hole in my throat, had too much of it, gave myself an ulcer.
No,
And then
I do not remember that.
I had to explain that to the coaches, and they're like, "Why would you have an ulcer?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Just played it off like it was some freak accident thing, and they're just like, "Okay, well, we'll see you at church." Yeah, it just went right over their head. Now, speaking of coaches here, we have our first shot of Coach Harris, played by a very young 31-year-old John Goodman. And we talked a little bit about this on the open. Huge fan of John Goodman. JD, what's your favorite John Goodman film? Why is it Flintstones?
It has to be the Flintstones. Is he not just the perfect Fred Flintstone?
He actually was.
He really was.
He really was. That might be a future episode. That's definitely not my favorite. I would have to go with Big Lebowski. What about you?
You mean, what about me when you just asked me what my favorite John Goodman movie was?
It's not Flintstones. Come on. Cut the crap here.
Okay. Yeah, it has to be Lebowski, obviously,
Okay.
in our archives. No, I mean, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Two, it's probably one of his most iconic characters of all time. And three, is probably one of the most iconic characters of all time, not for just himself, not just for the movie, but in all of cinema. People know Walter.
Shomer Chavez. Donnie's out of his element, man. We have a montage of the jocks kicking out all the freshmen from the dorm room. I love this scene. It's just nerds flying out the windows. And then Harris announces to all these young freshmen who are now homeless that they will be provided the best food and accommodations possible, which we find out is actually a living arrangement / half of a gymnasium until basketball season starts. JD, what do you think about the new accommodations here?
A little bit kind of almost politically on point with what we're dealing with in the current American climate when we're talking about throwing refugees into a gymnasium of sorts. But they've got their cots, they've got their TV, they've got food. I mean, they've got it good. So stop bitching, nerds.
Okay, point taken. Okay. And now we meet the school president next, who tells the guys that he's allowing freshmen to join fraternities because of the living situation. So late that day, the guys are trying to get some rest. And meanwhile, as they're trying to rest here, basketball practice is happening on the other side of the court. And then we kind of meet the rest of the cast here. Booger, Takashi, Lamar, the whole gang's here. Poindexter. Do you have any favorites? Anybody stand out in that cast here?
Besides Booger?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both love Booger.
I'm a
and
Booger
Boogers.
boy.
Yeah, but anybody else outside of Booger?
I like the little boy.
Wormser.
Oh, that sounds so weird.
Nope, can't say that.
Little kid lover. The kid, it's funny because he has what I forget the kid's name. Not Poindexter.
No, he's Wormser.
Worms. He plays such a small part in this film that it's just so unique that they bring in this out of place youngster to take place and take part with all of these other, fish out of water types, and yet he's such a small role, but so impactful that I just, in rewatching it, it definitely stuck with me. I was like, oh, that's funny, like especially with some of the later scenes that we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're meeting Betty Childs next as Lewis and Gilbert try to get the cheerleaders' opinion on what fraternity they should try and pledge. Betty Childs recommends Alpha Beta, and Lewis is like, all right, isn't that the one for jocks? And, oh, well, hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee sometime? I mean, he just goes for it. You got to admire Lewis here. But Gilbert's not buying it. He doesn't think they will ever get in, but Lewis argues. He's like, Miss Childs would never send us over there if we didn't have more than a decent shot at actually getting in. So we get to the Alpha Beta frat house next, and they're greeted by Ogre at the door. When they get in, they're both handed some rubbers, and we see a couple sheep, and I think we know what's going to happen next here. A little initiation process. So we cut back to the dormitory area where Booger and Takashi are playing cards, and Takashi says he has a frush. And Booger says, what the fuck is a frush? And he's like, anyway, well, 2 sevens beats a frush. And he takes his money. And then we see Gilbert and Lewis enter, and they're dressed like a couple of chickens, like Marv and Harry in Home Alone. What do you think of this scene?
Okay, so I'm assuming they're essentially tarred and feathered.
Yep, pretty much.
Which doesn't look like it's that painful of a thing, but apparently it's one of the most like horrible situations you could find yourself in. To actually be tarred and feathered. And I'm trying to think where I was watching this. I think it was the TV show on HBO, Carnival, and they tar and feather this one guy because the thing that you don't really understand about that process is that tar is scalding hot, and they just soak it on your skin and it just burns you. And then the feathers actually graft onto your burnt skin, so they can't just be washed off. They're like a part of you, so you're a chicken boy.
Oh yeah. I mean, tar is what they make roads out of. I mean, you don't want that on your skin.
Maybe in Indiana we use concrete in the rest of the world.
I mean, my grandpa was old fashioned. He used to tar his driveway every year. So clean it up, make it look good. You never did that? Nice solid black driveway?
No, I do. That is definitely on my yearly list and upcoming in the next month.
There you go. Tar it up, man. Now, we cut to our first clip in the computer lab with Gilbert and Judy. Let's take a listen here.
Just beginning. Relax.
It's no use. It's inhuman.
Oh, it's not human. Only humans can be inhuman. Here, let me show you. Working with a computer's great. I mean, it's godlike in a way. Because you can have complete control.
That's good.
Thanks. You know, some people, they can create with their hands, but when you're working with a computer, you gotta build something with your mind. If you're good, you can do something no one's ever seen before. It's a definite high.
JD, who would have thought, man? Gilbert's got a little game.
Oh, he does. He's got more than a little game. This little animation that he sets up with the little handhold and the little dance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, neither you nor I have that level of game.
No, sir. I mean, from a storytelling standpoint, where do you kind of feel like we're at this point in the film? You know, a lot of character development early on, but what would you say from a writing standpoint?
It's interesting because this movie in itself is kind of a conglomerate of the characters and the situations and how the characters respond to the situation and how their responses dictate the situation. So it's kind of like an avalanche. It's a snowball effect.
Okay.
So, you know, to me, in rewatching this movie, it's a little bit like out of nowhere to be like, okay, well, why do I give a damn about this guy and this girl and this computer program? Like, we know nothing about their scholarly pursuits, and we just see this girl banging on the keyboard out of the blue, and then he just comes in, he just kicks up the 43D, ED3D, and just all of a sudden makes this little animation. Just, I don't know, it seems kind of disjointed from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable to watch. It's cute.
We're at dinner next where Gilbert tells Lewis about his new girl, and Booger wants to know if he got in her pants. Gilbert's like, she not that type of girl. He's like, why? Does she have a penis?
Can't say that anymore.
Love his delivery. And then we're in the locker room, and the jocks see Takashi, and he's kind of Like, I don't know if he's like the manager. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing, but anyway, one of the jocks says, "Hey, do you know karate?" He's like, "No." So he puts the jock right over the top of his head.
That might
I
be my
love the
favorite.
I love the fact that he asked him though, just to make sure.
Because there's a chance that he does know karate, and he's
Right.
going to karate chop him right in the throat, and he doesn't want that.
Nope.
And I think it was Jefferson Darcy that asked him too.
It might have been, or somebody that looked like him. Quite a few of those guys walking around that locker room. But anyway, we cut to the nerds going door to door next, looking for a home to rent. At one point, Booger knocks on a door and the guy tells him to F off. That was probably my favorite one. But yeah, no luck at all here. JD, are you feeling bad for the nerds at all? No place to live, no place to go, door to door for rent?
Well, I feel a little bad because you guys, you have a whole gymnasium to yourselves. Just take the free room and board. Why are you going to go rent a house out? They've obviously never been homeless.
You bring up an interesting point. They had free shelter and free food. I mean, granted, it looked like some split pea soup that was kind of like throw up, but I mean, it was free.
Oh, all split pea soup looks like throw up.
Get a little time that just passes by, and then Lewis enters the gym and says he thinks he found a place. And we have a montage next of the guys cleaning up this old mess of a just dump. And it takes a little bit of elbow grease here, but it shines up real nice. And I really enjoyed the part where Booger's talking to Takashi, and he's like, "You feeling it now?" He's like, "No." "How about now?" And he just passes out as he's trying to paint the wall. I assume he had slipped him some drugs or marijuana or something, but what do you think of the montage?
It's definitely they're getting high.
Oh yeah.
Are they not? I mean, and it comes up later when they have their first frat party that they're definitely doing the drugs. So Booger's a bad influence for sure, but I just don't know why they're putting plaid flannel wallpaper on the walls.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was the 80s, man. A lot of bad mistakes.
1984.
Everybody has that guy that has that hookup. For us, we had, the guy we called Smokey McPot, not to give away his name. But there's always that one guy that likes to make sure everybody has just a little too much fun. We cut to Poindexter coming down the stairs, and that's when we have a rock come crashing through the window. Gilbert grabs the rock and reads it. It says, "Nerds, get out." So they take it to the authorities, but they're told they really can't do anything about it. They should go bring this up to the Greek Council, which, run by Stan Gable. He's the head of it, so that gets turned down as well. So they decide to send letters to all the different chapters here trying to get a pledge so they can get grandfathered in, whatever that process is. And the only one they get back is from Lambda Lambda Lambda, which is a all-black fraternity. Let's take a listen to this clip as they meet the head of the Lambda Lambda here.
As you know, we have no chapter at Adams College, which is why I've agreed to see you. But I must tell you, gentlemen, you have very little chance of becoming trilanders. I'm in a difficult situation here. I mean, after all, you're nerds.
According to your bylaws, you have to take us on a 60-day trial basis.
I beg your pardon?
According to your bylaws...
He's right, Yuan. Any group that petitions can become a probationary tri-land chapter. May I see that, please? Thank you. Well, gentlemen, you are now probationary tri-lands.
Hey, great, Yuan.
JD, what do you think of this scene?
Fish out of water. If there's never a better way of putting it, I love the fact that the only reason why they even get this meeting is because they didn't include a Polaroid of the team photo. So, like, the high-ups at Lambda have no idea what they're getting themselves into when they accept this potential frat from Adams College.
Nope.
And they have this just awkward meeting where they've got one, how do we even describe it? Do we just call him a black man? I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah,
Person of color? I don't know. Ethnic?
Yeah, last episode we had the whole mishap with sitting Indian style. We better stay away. Not 2 weeks in a row. So Lewis tries to ask Betty Childs to the party next, and she of course goes right to Gable and Ogre and tells them what the nerds are planning, and Stan says he knows just what to do. So back at the house, the guys are thinking about canceling the party when they hear the sisters Pie singing a song to them, and they ask if they can escort them to the party. And then as they leave, Takashi asks what Pie stands for, and Booger whispers in his ear, and that lights him up like a Christmas tree. I can only imagine what he said. JD, what do you think of the song from the Pies? I actually thought it was pretty funny.
It's a funny little song. It's very cute. And during the first time that you ever watch this movie, you think maybe there's something going on. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. But alas, what happens next?
Yeah, we get to the party and they have no-showed the guys here. And Judy, who is Gilbert's girl, comes to the rescue. She says she'll invite her sisters over, the Omega Moos. Booger says, not the Moos, they're pigs. And then a moment later, the ladies come busting in the door. They're all, I would say, a good 1.5 feet taller than Booger.
Oh,
as they
sure.
enter. They're big ladies. And then
that doesn't stop Booger at all. He's whining and dining and, well, 68ing them.
UN Jefferson and his assistant look completely bored out of their minds as they watch this party go on. It's about 10 o'clock when Booger pulls out the Wonder Joint. Thriller starts playing in the background, and now the party is in full effect. The UN assistant even gets his hands on a joint and says, that's some good shit. And even Poindexter got on the dance floor and had a little fun here. I mean, it kind of ends here badly for the guys with a couple piggies breaking up the party here. And they get sung Old MacDonald by the Lambdas and mooned. I actually would have just laughed at that. I don't know why they got so offended. But JD, what do you think of the whole party scene?
Well, first of all, Booger bringing out the Wonder Joint and the party just getting off the hook and getting all sorts of crank and crizzle in there. It's just hilarious because, none of them, I don't know, like, Booger is kind of a fish out of water in his own right.
Right.
He seems so cool, except for the fact that he's constantly picking his nose.
He does seem cool, except for the fact that he's not. For some reason. We don't really know. I guess it's just the booger picking.
But I think everybody has or knows people from high school or college that were kind of like, they should be really cool, but for some reason they're just not.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, well, duh. Obviously we thought the same about you.
Oh, thanks.
There was a kid in high school. I won't name his name because on the off shot that he actually listens. No, he obviously doesn't listen. That's a joke.
Okay.
He was really funny and he was cool, but at the same time extremely dorky.
Okay.
And super weird. And I remember one time in class, he taps me on the shoulder. He goes, "Hey, count how long I can hold my breath." So I was like, "All right, cool." And then 20 minutes later, he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, "How long was that?" And I was like, 20 minutes? And he was like, "That's it? New record." And I was like, what? I was like, are you, what?
Do that again so I can punch you right in the nose. Oh my gosh.
So there was that kid. I think in my book, that's Booger.
Yeah. Well, let's take a listen to Gilbert firing up the guys next year.
We'll never get into Lambda now.
Those jocks ruined everything.
I say we blow their fucking houses up.
No, we can't resort to violence. That'll just bring us down to their level.
What do?
We gotta beat them at their own game. We've gotta become the best fraternity on campus. If we win that homecoming carnival, we can take over the presidency of the Greek Council. That would drive them crazy.
But Gilbert, if we don't get approved by the Trilams, we won't even be a fraternity.
I say we blow the fuckers up.
Oh, we can't do that. But you're right. Their action tonight demands an immediate retaliation. And if we don't, we're nothing but the nerds they say we are.
I know what we're gonna do.
JD, what'd you think of this scene? Good moment from Gilbert. Lewis steps in as well. What'd you think?
Yeah, he brings the thunder and the lightning and the freaking hand of God in this scene for like a little bit of revenge, which I think obviously this is the revenge of the nerds, but like this is the kind of thing that is so like appropriate in 1984 as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we're the nerds, we're part of this all black fraternity. I've got a plan.
And,
Wow. Ooh, yeah.
well done. The guys are all dressed in black as they enter the Pie's house next, and they kind of set up some cameras, and we're going to get a full frontal shot of Betty Childs that I wasn't mad about. And we find Lewis creeping on her in the shower, which super inappropriate these days. This would never fly. Yeah, he's like, I'm stalking you. That's funny, right? And then they run into the older lady, and Booger says, "Step aside, mama. I want to see some muff."
That's just so.
His delivery, just amazing. So they make a break for the front door, and then once they get outside, Lamar and Wormser kind of slide down the rope after they've set up the cameras, and it looks like some spotlights on the house. And then back at the house, they're checking out the newly installed camera footage. We're getting naked chicks left and right. Takashi's like, "Oh, I drink a to that." And then Lewis says, "Wow, is it cold in there or what?" And then Booger calls for some Bush, and we got Bush. Again, JD, this would never fly in 2019. But what did you think of this thing?
Obviously, this just would not fly. Like, I don't know. I would be curious to how somebody would handle a remake of Revenge of the Nerds, or like a proper sequel, or maybe even a who knows, prequel with the dad. But you just couldn't do like this. Just almost feels like so meta. Like the principal or the dean would come out and be like, "Well, you kids can't watch this anymore." Like, yeah, I just.
You know what? We're going to save that for the end, because I actually have an idea that I'm going to run by you that I think would be pretty cool. So we'll get to that. So we cut to the next morning. Most of the nerds have stayed up all night watching this camera footage. When Lamar comes down, he's like, "Are you still watching the Pies?" And he's like, "Haven't you had enough?" And Lewis is like, "Never. Now we got back with the Pies. Now it's time to get back at the Alphas." So we cut to the locker room, and they pour liquid heat all over the jock straps. Let's take a listen to this scene here as Coach Harris is talking to the team. They got a little itchy going on.
Key to each season is homecoming. You win that one, you got your alumni support. You got your alumni support, you got that jock dorm, you get the laundry money, you get the new cars. Now this season started out fine. We won some big ball games, but we were lucky. We can't get soft. We can't sit back on our laurels. We win homecoming, we take league. We take league, we get a bowl bid. It's as simple as that. But gentlemen, you have got to want it. Do you want it? Yeah! I can't hear you. Yes! We can't let up. We gotta stay tough. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You gotta believe that you can do it. You gotta let them know that you want it. I want it. Good. Oh, ow. Shower up. Shit, we forgot to practice.
JD, why did we not ever pull this prank?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be straightforward with you. I never wore a cup.
I wouldn't even know how to put it on.
For audience, I didn't wear a cup. I wore junior thigh pads and knee pads, and I didn't wear a mouthpiece. And I once bit my tongue, and it was awful.
I didn't know you didn't wear a mouthpiece. That's a little bit insane.
Well, I guess I have a gag reflex thing, and two, like the whole talking.
Okay.
Like I was always talking, because we had some bad quarterbacks and some idiot other people on offense that just didn't know the plays, and it's just like I couldn't be constantly taking my mouthpiece out and telling everyone what to do.
Dude, what's the play?
It's like, just listen, everybody. And I would literally have to look back at the quarterback, and he would look at me, and he'd be like, well, what do I do? What's the adjustment? And I'd be like, dude, come on, do this. Yell this out.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a rough situation there, but yeah, that is a little surprising to me that you never wore a mouthpiece, but I would have gotten great pleasure in watching you gag up and down the football field. Just having to keep it in. That would have been awesome.
Oh, there we go. You want to watch me gag on it?
Where's this going? Okay. Now, Lewis calls he calls over to Ewan Jefferson to tell him about the prank. And Jefferson, not only does he laugh and think it's amazing, he welcomes him to the Tri-Lambda. So we cut to the Lambdas taking a group photo, making a toast. And that's when we see a fire outside the house that says nerds. Again, I mean, just from a writing perspective, JD, what do you think this kind of sets up, like this fiery scene outside?
I like the back and forth and the power dynamic that it does create and that it does set up, and the fact that you can have the nerds and they can have the upper hand, but at the same time, the jocks have more of the resources and they get to burn nerds. So it's this back and forth. It's a proverbial tug of war, which we get to see later. And I think that's sort of a metaphor, especially what happens when we have the tug of war scene. And, no spoilers, but it's that in that writing between the back and the forth that establishes who's in control. And again, look, we'll talk more when we get to the actual tug of war scene, but that's what we're doing here.
Well, they bring up the offense against the Alphas to the Greek Council, but again, Stan Gable is there to cut it all off. No charges are filed. And Poindexter says the only way they're going to get a fair shake is to beat them. Lewis says they're going to have to win the homecoming carnival, and that's exactly what they're going to do. So we cut to the carnival games, and Takashi is first up for the tricycle race. It's going to be 20 laps, and after every lap, you got to chug a beer. But Poindexter has got the magic pill, which will counteract any alcohol that's in his system. So a few laps in, Takashi is just feeling great as he cruises to a big lead, and they get to the final lap, and Takashi takes off. The Alphas crash, and Takashi picks up the W, man. JD, this looked really fun. I mean, why is this not a thing? This should be in the Olympics.
With 20 beers?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, on a tricycle?
Could you even imagine how exciting that would be, though? Like USA versus China versus like Germany, all these countries, and we're in a tricycle race chugging beers.
You're just describing the movie Beer Fest.
Ratings is what I'm describing, my friend.
No, Beer Fest. Excellent movie.
Would you rather watch that or a nice long gymnastics routine?
Oh, come on. Men's or women's?
Men's. I'll go with what you like.
Son of a bitch. I see what you did there, and I don't like it.
That was bitter. Next up is the Trojan Horse Challenge. Poindexter is picked to try and win, but he goes up against Ogre, who just blows him out of the water here. And then after that, Poindexter loses an arm wrestling challenge. Booger wins his. And then Ogre just barely beats one of the girls from the Moose. And then we cut to our tug of war. Of course, the nerds are going to be no match here for the Alphas, but they outsmart him with that Amdula Oblongata. They drop the rope. The Alphas crash to the ground, and they win the contest. Now, JD, I'm just going to let you take over here because you're a bit of a burping connoisseur. What did you think of the Booger versus Ogre burp off?
Little disappointed in Ogre's burp. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. He was just kind of like, bleh. And after he's been chugging beer out of this like trophy the entire movie, and he's just been drunk and wild and surly the entire time, and that's the best he can muster, was just bleh. But I love the way that afterwards he takes a sip out of the trophy and spits it into the audience like he's a freaking WWE star or villain. it was just like so Mr. Perfect.
Okay. I like that comparison. Also, R.I.P. Mr. Perfect. Love that guy. We get to the javelin throw, and there's some pretty good throws here, but when Lamar gets up to take his turn, the nerds have rigged up a very aerodynamic javelin, and it just floats in the air thanks to Wormser and him being a master of aerodynamics.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Mind you, keep in fact that in 2019, rewatching this movie, it's a master of aerodynamics in conjunction with Lamar's limp wrist.
Yeah.
I don't think that flies. You
No.
can't say that anymore.
Yep, sure can't.
Because he's a homosexual, he has a limp wrist, so let's make a special javelin for him to throw. I was like sort of scratching my head, and I was like, how did they get away with that?
I mean, at that point, I was like, all right, now I'm offended. What's going on here?
I have a limp wrist, limp dick, your normal day.
Yeah. Well, we cut to the homecoming carnival, and we get to the charity booth. Lewis tries to get a kiss from Betty, but she pulls away and sends in the fatty. And then Betty tells Stan that she wants to go make some love in the tent because she's getting horny. Well, Lewis overhears this and grabs Stan's mask, very Darth Vader-ish. And when he isn't watching, he follows Betty into the tent where he disguises himself as Stan. And let's just say, JD, he took her on more than a moonwalk, if you know what I mean. Stan is told the next scene that the nerds are over $2,000 from selling pies. So Ogre goes over to see what the big deal is with the pie. And when he gets to the bottom, we find out why they're in such hot demand. The nerds have been putting a photo of a naked Betty at the bottom of the pie pan. And Stan's like, hey, that's my pie. Now, we cut back to Betty and Lewis, and she finds out it was him the whole time. And she asked if all nerds are as good as you, and he says yes. And that's because all the jocks think about is sports, and all we think about is sex. JD, let's break it down. What do you think of these scenes?
Obviously, the pie pan was a delicious decision by them.
Was it not just whipped cream?
I get pie, but yeah, no. Give me a lemon meringue, give me a key lime, give me some Georgia mud.
Mm-hmm.
They just have whipped cream on a booty bun.
I'd have bought it in a heartbeat.
You would have bought multiple.
Yeah, probably.
One for each hand.
So we cut to the variety show next, and the alphas do a swap with the pie. So the girls are the players, the guys are the cheerleaders, and Coach Harris and the crowd are just eating it up. But as they celebrate, some fireworks go off, and let's listen to the nerds' performance here.
Everybody, and everybody clap your hands. We lambda, and oh, make a move. And we come here on stage tonight to do a show for you. We got a rockin' rhythm and a high-tech sound that'll make you move your body down to the ground. We got Poindexter on the violin, and Lewis and Gilbert will be joining in. We got Booker Presley on the mean guitar, and a rap by little old me, Lamar. We got Takashi beating on his gong. The boys and the moves are clapping along. And just when you thought you seen it all, along comes a lambda 4-foot tall. So Worms will come on out here on the floor, so we can work our body
JD, I freaking love this scene. The shot of Poindexter at the start, just beep, 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 beep. How awesome was this?
It's fantastic. Like this is like a landmark scene in cinema.
Yeah.
And it's been done and redone and referenced and played off of for years upon years.
Yeah, it sure has. I mean, even Booger on the guitar I thought was really cool. Just coming in with the one note, just ring, just
and they
dressed up like Elvis.
They set that up because there's a scene earlier in the house where he's laying on the couch just strumming on the guitar.
Yep. Very well done. And at some point, that song will make it into this show, probably in the background to close it out. But I just love it. So the crowd goes crazy. Safe to say the Lambdas have knocked it out of the park. And here comes Skolnick, the school. What is he, the dean? I think he's the dean of the school. Pretty sure.
Dean.
So Skolnick, the dean, enters the stage and presents the trophy to this year's winners, Lambda, 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 and Omega Moon. And they get to announce the head of the Greek Council for next year. And Lewis grabs the mic and he's like, "Oh, we've already decided. It's Gilbert. He'll be the head of the council." And then we cut to Betty, who blows off Stan for Lewis. And as she walks away, she goes, "I can't believe I'm in love with a nerd." What'd you think of this, man?
It's the perfect ending for him. It's everything that he wants. And it's kind of the American dream in the way that what you want is capable of you just going out and finding the right legs to spread and putting your tongue to play.
Oh, wow.
Was that too much?
It was on the nose, but
No, it was on on the nose.
Just the tip?
Right, there we go.
There we go. So we cut to Coach Harris, who says that they got their asses whipped by a bunch of goddamn nerds. Nerds! And he says, "You know what? I'd do something if I was you guys." And the alphas go storming out of the locker room, and then they storm the house, and they bust down the fence, and they graffiti it. They break up Booger's guitar. The robot's broken. And then let's take a listen here as Lewis admits to being a nerd for the first time.
I'm a nerd. Welcome to the real world. I never really wanted to believe that. It's okay. It's not okay. We're nothing. We let them destroy our house. Louis, we're going to control the Greek Council next year. Big deal. You'd be dead by then, Gilbert. Nobody cares. Don't you understand that? The university doesn't care. There's nothing we can do about it. I think we got something good going, and I'm not going to let them take it away from us. Gilbert, don't be a fool. You just get yourself hurt again. Big deal. Gilbert.
JD, I thought this was a pretty good moment here from Lewis. What'd you think?
It for sure is, especially since when you think about what being a nerd is and what that means, especially in 1984 versus nowadays, where it doesn't carry the same weight. It actually had sort of like a stigma to it. And for Lewis to be able to admit that in front of everybody and have the power and the confidence that mirrors what his adversaries have had this entire time, sets that foil and that juxtaposition between the two of them, which I think that's kind of why this is such a fantastic movie.
Yeah, and I think it's a good moment too, just because throughout the movie, he's so positive. Oh, Betty would never do this to us. Oh, we'll have a fair shot. We'll find a place to live. Don't worry. And now he's like, God, I'm a nerd, man. Never going to be anything else. So it kind of really sets up the ending here pretty nice. So Gilbert storms out. He says he's going to handle this once and for all. He enters the pep rally. He immediately gets tossed into Koi Pond. See what I did there? And then climbs his way out of the pond and grabs the microphone from Harris. But he gets choked in the process. But that's when Skolnick gets some balls for the first time and kind of comes to the rescue, pushes Harris, and then UN Jefferson and his frat brothers show up, and they line up in front of the alphas as the nerds arrive to see what's going down. Jefferson says, "Okay, kid, say what you gotta say. Let's take a listen to Gilbert as we bring it home."
I just wanted to say that I'm a nerd. And I'm here tonight to stand up for the rights of other nerds. I mean, all our lives, we've been laughed at and made to feel inferior. And tonight, those bastards, they trashed our house. Why? Because we're smart? Because we look different? Well, we're not. I'm a nerd, and I'm pretty proud of it. Hi, Gilbert.
I'm a nerd too. I just found that out tonight. We have news for the beautiful people. There's a lot more of us in our review. I know there's alumni here tonight. When you went to Adams, you might have been called a spaz, or a dork, or a geek. Any of you that have ever felt stepped on, left out, picked on, put down, whether you think you're a nerd or not, why don't you just come down here and join us, okay? Come on. Hi, Betty. Just join us, because,
JD, Queen is blasting. We are the champions. The nerds have united. What'd you think of this scene?
The nerds are united. I love that. That's such a nice way of putting it. Like, it's unity and it's breaking down barriers. It's Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall. And we have everything about class division in college obliterated. And you know what, Ogre? Kyle, you're Ogre.
Yep, probably am.
You're not my favorite character anymore.
You know what is interesting is they picked the ultimate jock song to end the Revenge of the Nerds with. I thought that was an interesting choice.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I totally agree.
We are the champ. That's like the anthem for the jocks. Everybody knows that song. Very interesting. And then the film ends with Skolnick telling the jocks that he's going to let the Lambdas live in the dorm rooms while you guys rebuild a house. And Ogre's like, where are we going to live? He's like, hey, you're jocks. Go live in the gym. So the credits roll. Let's close it out. JD, what'd you think of the movie?
I really enjoyed watching this. Like, the first opening scene, I was kind of on the fence, and I was like, why are we doing this? I'm not entirely sure why we're doing this movie. But in watching it and, like, totally being enthralled with what this means and what this movie is collectively and culturally to 1984 for generations going into college or having gone through college, I think it's completely relevant and on point. And I enjoyed the fuck out of it. So I don't know if this was your idea, if somebody suggested that we watch it, but thank you to either you or someone else. I hate you, but I love you, Kyle.
All right. Well, I hate / love you as well. Man, 35 years old. I don't know that the movie's held up as far as, like, how could you even put this thing on TV anymore without there being a riot from people? But I would say, like, overall, this is a really freaking enjoyable movie to sit here. And spawned quite a few sequels. We'll talk about those. But yeah, I wanted to kind of circle back to something we talked about earlier. And you mentioned, like, well, what if they ever try to remake this movie? Well, as fate would have it, they actually did. So in 2007, they were picked up by Fox Atomic to remake this movie with a pretty interesting cast. Adam Brody, Chris Marquette, Nick Zano, Kristen Cavallari from now married to Jay Cutler. Interesting choice there. Was going to be directed by Kyle Newman, who you would know from quite a few things, and produced by Mick G. Adam Goldberg from The Goldberg Show was one of the writers on this thing, but it was canceled after 2 weeks of filming. They weren't happy with the dailies, and it just wasn't working because they were supposed to film at Emory University. And then Emory's officials got wind of the script. They didn't like it, so they shut him out, kicked him out. And they had to move to a smaller school called Agnes Scott, which is a tiny, I think, like Division III school. Yeah, it wasn't going to work there. So it got canceled and shit canned.
Ugh.
I'd kind of like to see some of the dailies. What about you?
I would be very interested. Again, 2007, that's 12 years ago. That's a much different world than 2019. So if it got shit canned then, geez, how does that hold up now?
Hard to say. I wonder if Kristen Cavallari was going to be the role of Betty. That would be an interesting.
I would assume as much.
A lot of nudity. Just saying. That might have changed her her career on television because she's got her own show now. I don't know if that would ever happen for her. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the last we've heard of Revenge of the Nerds. Of course, they had the show on TBS for a couple years, King of the Nerds, with Booger and Lewis that were hosting the show. Did you ever watch King of the Nerds at all?
I did not, no.
Okay. Well, that's it, man. Let's wrap it up. Let's do a quick little preview of what we got going on for the rest of the month here. We're going to be back next week with an all new episode. We might have a couple guests. We might not have any guests. We haven't reached out to said guest yet, but we're diving back into Nightmare on Elm Street for Nightmare on Elm Street 3. JD, this was kind of your pick, man. Tell the audience why we're covering Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Dream Warriors is, in my opinion, the best of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. There's a lot less stringy Freddy Krueger. There's a lot less sexuality, and we get into some of the mythology behind, if Freddy can control dreams, why can't we? And they're the freaking Dream Warriors. And what, we're looking at 30 years out for this?
Yeah.
We're looking at its 30th anniversary. So let's celebrate together. If you've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, go ahead, head to the archives, listen to Part 1, listen to Part 2 with Black Cat Shadow.
Yep.
And jump into Part 3 with us when we break that mother effer down.
Absolutely. And jump on our social media and give us a follow at Back in Time Pod. We're up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook is just Back in Time Podcast. You can find us on the web at backintimepod.com, where you can follow JD's blog. You can follow JD at Unjust Justin. I'm at Chautry29. But for now, we are out of time. Time to jump into the DeLorean, punch in today's date, cruise back to present day. Thanks for listening. See ya.
Did he keep the mask on the entire time he went down on her? Or did he, like, lift it up, put it down? Think about it. Ooh.
Oh, we'll see what I did there? All right, we're out.